Live from Town Square Towers at the heart of the Jersey Shore. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. Get up, get out, do something. Join the conversation. 732-505-1160. News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Listen online at WOBMAM.com.
Hey, welcome back. Wake up with Jeremy Grunin. 7:08 Monday, October 10th, 47 degrees, getting up to 62 today. WOBM AM 1160, 1310 News Talk Radio. Streaming live on the radio pop app and WOBMAM.com. 732-505-1160 to join the conversation. Happy Columbus Day. We are now joined in studio by Dr. Matthew Jung. He is an ear, nose, and throat specialist at Southern Ocean Medical Center. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, I am fantastic. You good? But you know, you did throw me off this morning. By the way, Seattle cell phone number. I was like, "What's going on?" Is that like,
right.
is that your burner phone or your actual phone?
That's my actual number.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if maybe that was like the one for whatever. So tell us a little, ear, nose, and throat specialist. What are you doing day to day?
So as an ear, nose, and throat specialist, we take care of issues from anywhere really from the collarbone up to the top of your head, minus the actual brain and the eyes. Children, adults, infants, so patients of all ages. And you can really break it down into issues involving the nose and the sinuses, or your ears, and what we call your lateral skull base, a bone on the side of your head. You can break it down to dealing with issues with cancer and oncology. So there's even a subset of ENTs who specialize in nothing but head and neck cancer. There's throat problems, so voice disorders, swallowing problems, allergies. We deal with a lot of patients with allergies. And there are some ENTs who do nothing but children. I also see adults and children as well. So it's a huge broad of problems, really. Anything from the collarbone up to the top of your head.
Yeah, I feel like I had a lot of experience as a small, younger child because I had my tonsils out. I had my adenoids out. I had tubes put in my ears. There's nothing cooler than being like a 9-year-old kid that has to wear a swimming cap in the that's like I wasn't enough of a dork already, but they're like, oh yeah, you have two choices. You can either put Vaseline and cotton balls in your ears and then put it, or you can just wear a swimming. I'm like, really? Because I don't have enough issues. Anyway, so I do have a visceral reaction when I meet an ear, nose, and throat doctor because I feel like, I've been scarred for life by your kind. I'm just saying. I'm leaving it at that. Now, how do you decide? So you're in medical school and you're like everybody works through what their specialty is going to be, and you say one day you're like, you know what, ear, nose, and throat. I'm all about it. What happened? How does that happen?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. So my brother-in-law is actually he's older than I am, but he's an ENT. So when I first started medical school, I had no idea what ENT did. I didn't even realize ENTs were surgeons. And I think a lot of people don't realize we're actually a surgical specialty. So I just kind of looked into it more, and it just kind of made sense to me. So I think a lot of medical students, you kind of decide whether you're going to be a surgeon or a non-surgeon. And then you go through gross anatomy, dissecting cadavers in first year of medical school. And then you realize, oh, I kind of like this part of the body better. In my case, I actually broke my ankle during gross anatomy, so like I missed out on the head and neck section. So it's even more amazing that I ended up doing what I do. But it just makes sense for me.
Right.
I just like the anatomy is extremely complex and it's fun.
Oh, so you're not talking about the Matthew Modine movie, right?
I don't get that.
Gross Anatomy. Was
it
that
yeah, that's right.
I was like, wow, you broke your ankle during a movie? Dude, you were really, I've heard of that during Rocky Horror Picture Show, but I don't know if I've heard of it during that kind of a movie. All right.
That's a great movie.
All right, so we're talking, we're kind of really all bringing it back together to we're talking today dizziness and vertigo. Mm-hmm. All right, so how common is dizziness?
Dizziness is pretty common. I would say if you took a survey of 100 people in the room, I would say most people, maybe half of the people would say I've had some form of dizziness, right? But the issue is dizziness is actually just it's not really a diagnosis. It's a word, a very vague word to describe some sense of motion or imbalance. So it's very non-specific. So if you say dizziness, I would say a lot of people would say, I probably had some kind of dizziness before, but it's hard to put an exact number to it.
Right. And what causes that dizziness? I mean, aside from, I know maybe on a weekend, some people get more dizzy than during the week because maybe they're out too late the night before and there may be some, outside things that they consume. But what else causes dizziness?
Exactly. So alcohol can certainly cause dizziness, and usually that's in the form of vertigo, which you can go into in a little bit. So if you were to break down the different types of dizziness, I think you can. That's the first step, and then you can determine what are the actual causes. So dizziness can be, for some people, lightheadedness. So like you've been sitting down for 8 hours at the desk, you get up too quickly, and you had water all day. Your blood pressure can't catch up to you standing up because your blood is all in your legs, for instance, and you get hypotensive. That's called orthostatic hypotension. So blood pressure changes, dehydration. Those things can cause lightheadedness. If you are a diabetic, for instance, and you are on an insulin regimen, you take your insulin, but you don't take enough carbohydrates, you can get low blood sugar, which is called hypoglycemia. And one of the symptoms of that is lightheadedness and shakiness. Stress and anxiety can cause that kind of symptom. For folks with other cardiovascular disease, you can have certain arrhythmias of the heart where your heart's not beating correctly, and that can give you a sense of something not being right too. But there's also so that's lightheadedness. But somebody might actually say, "Hey doc, I was in bed. I turned over to the right to turn the light off, and oh my gosh, the room started spinning around me." Or I feel like I'm on a boat and I don't know what that. I know I'm not moving. So that's actually vertigo. And vertigo is defined as a sense of motion, whether your body's moving when it's not, or you're actually seeing your surroundings move. And there's a whole slew of causes for that type of dizziness, which is actually called vertigo.
Okay, so vertigo is different than dizziness because dizziness, you're saying, is like a one-shot deal,
like a big umbrella term. And
okay.
under dizziness, you can get into the more specific, more of a descriptor, if you will, that can help you tease out what's causing it.
Okay, got it. So when you're saying that, if I feel so, vertigo though would be more defined by like the feeling of like spinning, right? Like, or the feeling of like when I feel like I'm really out of control. Is that more as opposed to just like that when I stand up from when I stand up from being sitting down for a while,
right?
Because people often use, I think, the wrong terminology, and they say, "Oh, I just had a shot."
I got the vertigo.
I just got vertigo. You know what I mean? Like, no, you don't just get. Like, does that bother you?
No,
I get
you're
it.
over
it.
It's tough. It's really tricky, and for some people, especially with children who have this type of problem, especially for kids, it's hard to just put into words what they're experiencing, and for some, it might be just scary. But vertigo has a very specific definition. That is, your surroundings are moving. So people will say spinning or even tilting, if you will, and not many people are aware that the definition also includes the sense that your body is moving. So you don't have to actually see things spinning, but if you feel like you're just on a roller coaster, or just your body's moving and you know it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we come back, we're gonna dive more into vertigo. Those like swimming, like like you said,
we'll spin right into it.
Yeah, spinning into it. There you go. There's all kinds of ways we can get more deeper into vertigo, and we'll also talk about how we could treat it and things like that. Dr. Matthew Jung, ear, nose, and throat specialist, Southern Ocean Medical Center. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. Back after this.
Get more Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin at our website, WOBMAM.com. News Talk Radio, WOBM AM 1160 and 1310.
Oh, you know what? Dr. Jung's never seen Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo.
Oh,
my cantor, one of my spiritual leaders, just sent me the cover shot of that movie. You need to see Vertigo. It's an Alfred Hitchcock classic.
I think I do.
Oh, okay. All right. So what part of your body is affected specifically when dealing with vertigo?
So a major contributor is the inner ear, which is where the ENT doctor gets involved. There's the ability for the body to realize where the head is. So, is your body moving or not? The mega computer is the brain, but there's a big sensory input that comes from the inner ear. So everyone knows the ear is responsible for hearing. There's actually a part of it that's also responsible for balance, and that's done via these little tubes, if you will, that are filled with fluid. So when you move your head from side to side or spin around in circles, there's movement of that fluid, and that tells that's how the ear determines whether there's rotation or tilt, and that sends signal to the brain. The brain also then takes into information from what your eyes are telling you, and then also what your body and like the sensation of your feet underground, and then incorporate that total. So if you have anything going wrong with any one of those mechanisms, for instance, a diabetic with numb or tingling feet who can't feel the ground very well, or people who can't see very well, and you're losing those additional senses, you can end up with problems with vertigo. So there are common disorders affecting the inner ear that can cause an asymmetry of how well your inner ear is working on your left versus your right, and that's usually the most common cause for the sensation that your head is moving when it's not.
Got it. And I assume it comes on quickly, right?
Depends on what's causing it, but yeah, usually. So common things being common, the most common form of vertigo is caused by something called BPPV. It's a mouthful. It stands for benign, so it's not cancer. It's benign. Positional, so it usually happens when you turn your head in a certain direction. Paroxysmal, meaning it's short-lived, and vertigo, so benign, positional, paroxysmal, vertigo.
Right.
And that is characteristic. So that's the one where I was telling you earlier. Someone says, I turned to the right to turn the light off, or I was reaching up into the cupboard to get a cup out, and oh my gosh, all of a sudden, the world started spinning around me, and after about 10 seconds or so, it went away, and I was fine.
So if that happens, they're down with BPPV.
That's right.
See what I did there?
I did.
See what I did? All right, good. So cool. So and how long does that typically last for?
It will last for seconds. Rarely will it go past more than 2-3 minutes.
Right. But in that time, I mean, I assume somebody could fall. They could hurt themselves, and that's what I mean. It leads to in and of itself, just like on its own, it's not really. It's not. Can it be more, or is it just what the result of that is? Does that make sense?
Right. So usually, because it's so short-lived, patients will grab onto something, or they'll just sit down until it passes. And the reason why this is happening is because within our inner ear, the balance portions of it, there are little tiny particles. You'll hear people say crystals, and like, "Hey doc, I got the rocks in my ears" or something, right? So there are these little particles that come loose from, rather than being stationary, they come loose and they float throughout those little tubes full of fluids, and they disrupt the sensation of movement.
Right.
So when you sit still, those particles settle down again, and then the sensation of movement stops. So that's a very common reason for someone to come to an ENT, and it's very easily treated in the vast majority of cases with positioning maneuvers.
Right. It's more common in the elderly?
And for some reason, it seems to be more common in the elderly. It certainly can happen in children, too, although it's more unusual. I've seen it. But the older you get, it seems like the higher the chance of these particles coming loose. Also, patients who've had major concussions, head traumas could be more susceptible to this happening. But yeah.
Okay.
That's BPPV.
So I'm down with it. So when we come back, I want to talk about treatment options, right? If there's anything we do. I know that there are some more serious kind of conditions that can be associated with vertigo. And then, of course, we're going to give you your magic wand so that you can, end vertigo once and for all, or do something even more special. Because if you ended vertigo, that probably may cut down on your practice, right? I'm just saying. I mean, you got to be very careful. Anyway, Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin, Dr. Matthew Jung, ear, nose, and throat specialist. Got a private practice, but he's also at Southern Ocean Medical Center. So there you go. All right, did better that time, right? Well, listen to Kevin Williams' Hometown View, and then back with us.
The news is next. Live from the WOBM Newsroom, the Town Square, New Jersey News Network, and Fox News Radio. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Live from the Jersey Shore to the world. Get up, get out, do something. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. Take the show wherever you go. Download the free Radio Pup app for your smartphone or tablet. Join the conversation. 732-505-1160. News Talk Radio WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. Listen online at WOBMAM.com.
Welcome back. Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin. 7:34 Monday, October 10th. 47 degrees. Getting up to 62 today. WOBM AM 1160 and 1310. News Talk Radio. Stream live on the Radio Pup app at WOBMAM.com. 732-505-1160. Dr. Jung is making fun of me because, he said that they don't do that whole, cover your ear thing anymore with, and so I said, I've actually gotten to the age now where I had procedures done 35 years ago, and that was like the Stone Age, right? Like they're like, no, that was like 4 generations ago of like, what do they do now if I have that problem? Do they even put tubes in your ear?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if
we
you
put
have like,
tubes in, but we'll say unless you're going into like a dirty lake and submerging your head, you should probably plug your ears. But other than that, we realized a little bit of water in your ear is not gonna be a terrible thing. So sorry.
Thanks a lot. You know what? I would have been such a different person had I not been traumatized by that so early on.
Look where you are now.
So, are there treatment options for vertigo? Is there any way to treat it?
So for BPPV, there is positioning maneuvers. So the doctor can identify which ear is the culprit, and then will help turn your body in certain directions to let those particles float back to where they should be. But really, treatment options kind of depend on what's causing your vertigo again. So a lot of times we'll break up vertigo into causes from your inner ear versus vertigo caused by problems in your brain. So some things to look out for is if apart from the classic symptoms we described for BPPV, there's vertigos that can last longer, minutes to maybe even hours at a time. And so if you notice when that happens, you're also having, boy, my hearing is going down, or my hearing is fluctuating, or there's this ringing sound that's getting louder and louder when I get dizzy, or I feel like there's a whole lot of pressure in my ear. That's something called Meniere's disease. And that's because of fluid pressures in those inner ears get really high. So there's treatment options for that, including low salt diet. You could put on diuretics, which help you pee out more fluid in your body.
By L. Ron Hubbard.
I don't get that.
No, that's Dianetics. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You're doing great. Keep going.
Boy, I feel like I need to keep up.
No, you're good. It's I'm just doing pop culture stuff. It's all right. You're probably doing great. Go ahead.
Let's see. The other cause for vertigo that can last minutes to hours, for instance, might be migraines. So people say, oh, well, I don't have a headache when this happens. But you don't necessarily have to have a headache to have migraine type vertigo. If you have a history of headaches in the past, and every now and then you get a headache when you have these severe vertigos, it could be a migraine associated dizziness. And other additional symptoms can kind of clue you in on it. They'll say, boy, when this happens, the light bothers me. I need to crawl up into a dark room and turn off the radio because the loud noises are bothering my ears. I don't know why I said radio and looked at you. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's all right.
TV.
No, by the way, look, I just want to show you this. See that L. Ron Hubbard. See that it's dying at 20 million copies sold.
Oh, there you go.
In 50 countries. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay.
Continue. You're doing great.
If you have vertigo caused by sources in your brain, so that could be like a stroke or transient ischemic attacks, for instance, and that's not a real stroke, but that's something that kind of stroke-like symptoms. Vertigo, in the sense of dizziness and movement, can be an early symptom, but usually there are other symptoms to kind of clue you in that something serious is going on. That could be a severe headache. That could be weakness in one side of the body. Someone might say, hey, you're slurring your speech. Kind of more like your typical stroke-like symptoms. So treatment can be tailored to all those. When it works, it's great. So BPV is great because it's classic. You turn the head from side to side, and 90% of the times patients go, "Wow, this is great," and you feel great. But you can get dizzy just from normal aging too. So in those cases, it's not as straightforward. But oftentimes vestibular therapy, where physical therapists kind of key in on what part of your vestibular system, we call it, balance system, is lacking, and they kind of try to train your body and your brain to compensate for that, with visual exercises or balance exercises. So there's usually something we can do to try to help you out.
At what point do you think it's like, when is it appropriate for someone to actually go get professional help?
Mm-hmm. So that's a great question. So like I said, it's very common to feel dizzy, right? So if you're like, oh, I got up, I got lightheaded, that happens every now and then, doesn't really bother me too much because I think I just need to drink water and feel better. I think that's pretty more physiological. I mean, it's common, it's normal. But if that's happening every time you stand up, you're getting lightheaded, you start flushing, you're sweating, something's clearly not right, you should probably go see your doctor.
Right.
If in terms of vertigo, you wake up and you're just spinning and it just won't stop, and it's really severe, you can't get off the ground, you're throwing up, you're nauseous, that would be a good reason to emergently go to the ER. Yeah, because that could be from an inner ear infection, but which usually will pass after a day or so, and then you'll kind of have this hangover feeling, but it has not as great of a sequelae as if you had a stroke. So I mean, that could be something that needs to be teased out. So you kind of have to use common sense here. If something's severely wrong, you should go to the ER.
Right.
But for the other symptoms I talked about, where you're kind of having this recurring problem, and you're just not sure, you don't need to suffer. You should go to your doctor so you can tease out, is this more of a lightheadedness phenomenon? Is this more, could it be diabetes, cardiovascular, or is this something more ear or brain related? Do I need to send you to an ENT or a neurologist?
Sure.
But at least that way you can get help.
It reminds me of what I hear people saying now. They say, feel something, say something.
Right.
Isn't that, or is it see something, say something? I don't remember. All right. Listen, it's time. Zach, we're going to run over by a minute or two. You're just going to have to deal with it, okay?
All right.
You're a professional. You're fine.
I can handle it.
It's time we give you the magic wand, right? The pixie dust, the fairy dust, the ability just to wiggle your nose and make something happen, make an impact. Dr. Jung, what are you going to do?
Well, if I had a magic wand for this problem, I would make it, just make it so it doesn't exist, I guess. But the recurring nature of the problem, the severity of it, it can be very disabling. A lot of people can miss out on school. They can miss out on their jobs. You're just feeling crummy. So if I can decrease the symptoms, but also make it easier to diagnose.
Right.
Absolutely.
So that's probably the better way to go, because if you get rid of it, then that hurts your business. but if you make it easier to diagnose, that just makes your life easier, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's like they said, like I remember in one of the Star Wars episodes, Yoda said to Luke Skywalker, I know you hate Darth Vader, but remember, if you kill him, you're going to be unemployed.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, right. So you got to be careful. I think that was in one of the episodes. Dr. Jung, where do folks learn more about your practice? Where can they get in touch with you? How can they find you?
I think the web is great. We have a web page. It's called coastalearnoseandthroat.com, to spell it out. There's actually 9 of us total. And amongst the 9 of us, there are a few generalists, and we all have ENTs and more of the specific specialties that I talked about earlier. But we also have great data on the website that you can read up on, and additional links as well.
That's great. And of course, you also are affiliated with Southern Ocean Medical Center, so you can search them on the Meridian. It's now Hackensack Meridian, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Hackensack Meridian website, and learn more about the hospital there and about the Meridian Health System. Dr. Jung, thank you so much for coming in this morning. We'll be back with more Wake Up with Jeremy Grunin right after this.